Hey guys, today I'm finally going to talk to you a little bit about Paestum. So Paestum was the ancient city, the ancient Greek city we went to that had three ancient temples. Just a little reminder. It's a major ancient Greek city on the coast of the Tyrrhenian Sea in Magna Graecia, and it was originally dedicated to Poseidon by the Greeks in around 600 BC. It was eventually took over by the Lusanians and later by the Romans. So when Lusanians took over the city, they called it Paistos. They changed the name from hold on. Poseidonia, Poseidonia, I think, yeah. I just don't know how to read it. This Poseidonia. They changed the name to Paistos, and when Romans took over the city, they changed the name from Paistos to what it is today, Paestum, or however you say it. The ancient city, is notable for three ancient Greek temples, which are all in great condition. Actually, the first one we saw, the temple dedicated to Athena, this is Pino's claim, this is what he said. That's my source. He said that was the best preserved Doric temple ever. So I don't know if that's true, but it's a fun fact. So according to Strabo, was an ancient Greek, not ancient, I guess, yeah, ancient Greek geographer, not ancient Greek geographer from 64 BC. He was born on 64 BC and died on 24 AD. According to him, Poseidonia was found by Greek Achaeans from Sybaris. The colonists first built the city closer to the sea, and then they changed the location of the city to a higher elevated place, where it is now. This was approximately 600 BC. And during Paestum's first centuries, there were building of roads and temples and etc. And when Lusanius conquered around 5th century BC, I want to talk a little bit about this, because when we say the Lusanians conquered the city, it's not in the usual sense. It's not like they came to the city one night, burned the city down, killed everyone. It's not like that. It was, I'm just going to read this passage. By the important changes in funeral rites and in the type and contents of the tombs that can be seen to have taken place in the necropolis around this time. It was probably them who changed Poseidonia to Paestum. Their conquest should not be seen as a military defeat of a Greek city by barbarians, but rather as a result of a process of integration and political recognition of the indigenous element in the Greek structure. Above all, this is confirmed by the fact that everything within the city, the monuments and public spaces and the religious and political institutions set up by the Greek colonists, continued during the time of the Lusanians as before. However, when the Romans took over the city, which was 273 BC, they changed stuff. So some of the stuff you've seen, I got this little booklet from the thing, which was really helpful. So this guy is called Ecclesiasterion, where the public meetings were in the Greek and Lusanian period. So the Romans filled that with earth and stones, and I think put a fountain there. So just like little changes like that. Or the main square, the forum, as the Romans call it, the huge field that was like right in the middle of the city. um, was used as. Remember when Professor Rosenfeld said it was like where the news person would announce news, people sold stuff, I guess the bank was there, or like just like little markets and stuff. So that was bigger in the Roman and the Lusanian period, and then when Romans took over, I think they like covered it with columns. They didn't necessarily like put a roof on it, but it was like, so the place where people could actually hang out and chill was smaller when the Romans took over. Okay. So there are three major temples in Doric style, dating back to the first half of the 6th century BC. The city of Paestum covers an area of around 120 hectares, and the three temples cover only 25 hectares. So it's a huge city. Like imagine the three temples that we saw, and that's just not even like a quarter of the whole thing altogether. It was surrounded, it still is actually surrounded by defensive walls. There are approximately 4,750 meters, which is like almost 5 kilometers, I don't know, in miles, feet, whatever. And they were 6 meters thick and then 50 meters high. Yeah. And the first temple was called, hold on. Yeah, the first temple of Hera was built in 550 BC, and 18th century archaeologists thought that it was a Roman building, not really a temple. They thought it was a Roman like a public building. So they called it, what did they call it? Basilica, I think. But then they realized that it was dedicated to Hera. And then the second temple of Hera dates back to 460 BC. And it's popular belief that this temple is dedicated to Poseidon, but archaeological findings prove that it was used to worship Hera. Actually, not only Hera, but also Zeus and another god, which is unknown which god it is. Maybe it's Poseidon. Maybe that's why people think it's Poseidon. And then Temple of Athena, which dates back to 500 BC, and it was thought to be dedicated to Ceres, but then they found out that it was dedicated to Athena because of like I think like little, I can't remember what they're called, but like the little statues that they worship. I think that's how they know that it was dedicated to Athena. And in this one, in the Temple of Athena, there were 3 medieval Christian tombs in the floor, which proves that the temple was at one time used as a Christian church. Fun fact. So, Paestum is also famous for its tombs, its cemeteries, most of which date back to the Lusanian period more than the Greek or the Roman. And Romans probably didn't like destroy all these because they couldn't find them, because they were like buried under the ground outside the city walls. So they were like not where Romans were interested in taking over, I guess. So we found them, luckily. We as in not Romans, like modern, modern day people. This is really strange because I'm alone in my room talking to a camera. I hope it turns out okay. And I aced this class. Okay. So these tombs were painted, which is why they're famous. And many of the pictures were of the favorite pursuits of the living in his lifetimes, is what it said. But it's not referring to the diver, because we don't think that The person who was in the Tomb of the Diver was actually like a professional diver. It was more like a. I'll get back to that. I'll talk about that. So the tombs were painted on the inside with scenes depicting funerals and the passage of the dead into the underworld. So it was. Think of a box. Yeah, so it was just like, I mean, I'm just gonna assume that we never talked about this and you guys don't know this because what else am I gonna do? So if you didn't know any of this, the tombs are, there's like, they're on the ground and they have four walls and then four walls of slabs of limestone. Oh, by the way, Paestum is built on limestone. So every limestone they use is usually from the area. It's usually like they take it from there. And so the limestone slabs are like circling the deceased, and then there's another fifth slab on top of the deceased. Okay. The tombs were painted on, okay, I said this. Paintings executed using a technique resembling fresco. True fresco, actually. A thin layer of plaster was applied to a smoothed travertine slab. So they were painted, if I'm correct, I think I'm correct. They were painted on the slabs when the plaster was still wet. So the paint dries with the wall. So it's painting's a part of the wall. That's why it's true fresco. For the diver's case, the tomb of the diver, this guy, this dude, iconic diver, made of 5 limestone blocks forming the 4 lateral walls and the roof, the floor being excavated in the natural rock ground. Cover slab shows a young man diving into a curling and waving stream of water, the passage from life to death. Fresco. Plaster was applied to the limestone slabs, after which a stylus was used to incise the design. A thin red line was added to render the image. Black, red, blue, green, and white colors were used. Black outline was added after, just like graffiti, like they did the paintings first and then they did the outlines, so the outlines like covered the shapes perfectly so it doesn't look like they painted out of the lines, you know? Okay. Images on walls were depictions of a symposium. So like the walls were, they included figures drinking, red figure cups, and wine mixing vessels that were intended for use at the symposium, were decorated similarly. All figures covered to the waist and crowned. And it's only men, and there's one woman who's playing the flute, and like this other guy's kind of kicking her out because she's not a man. And it's a guy's funeral. I guess that's how it worked back then. And it's almost like a celebration of the person dying and going to the other side. Unlike the common symposium scene, images of divers are almost completely unknown in the Greek art, which makes this so iconic and interesting and cool. The figures have complex anatomies, like the abs are like all painted, drawn one by one. It's really cool. Death and, okay, this is really cool, actually. This is my favorite part about this whole thing. Death and diving were connected in the Greek mind. It is suggested that the dive is meant to depict the moment of death. The diver dives alone, isolated against the sky, There is present all the intensity of the moment of death. Also suggested, individual was the member of a family group that was not integrated among the citizens of Poseidonia, which is why this might be different than any other tombs. But this is the only tomb I think that dates back to the Greek period, which proves that we don't know if this is like a normal thing or a unique thing. The tomb shows the deviation from the normal, and it is also a sign of political integration through the symposium. Okay, never mind. So yeah, I think, as Professor Rosenfeld said, it depicts an image of just like diving into death, just like leaving life and like all the worries and everything that the human existence is chained to, just like getting rid of all of that and just like going to the unknown, but in a positive sense. It's not really like we don't know what's gonna happen, like the person died and it's sad. It's more like, see you there, you know. It's kind of, it's really what's the word, it's cool. It's definitely cool. And it's just like, I don't know, it's almost like a Buddhist approach to death, and I think the image describes that really well. But thanks for listening, and bye.